Stars, and welcome to the Rathole. I'm your host, Commissioner Zack Eichten, and let's get into those Week 12 matchups. We had a lot of playoff implications from those matches, so let's just hop right into it. Game number one, we had the Gluten Frauds losing a nail biter to the Spring Chickens, 97.14 to 94.68. Really, honestly, a pretty devastating loss for the Gluten Frauds as they, are in a tough playoff spot. At 5-7 now after week 12, after starting the season 3-0, definitely not where the Frauds want to be. But 6-6 for the Spring Chickens puts them in contention to just win and hold a playoff spot. So let's get into how this happened. First of all, in the quarterback situation, an interception and a fumble from Josh Allen brought his score down 4 points, more than enough to what would have given the Frauds a win. Had he been able to not have those crucial turnovers in that game. Really, really tough up against Aaron Rodgers, who had, quite frankly, a fantastic game against Chicago, throwing 4 touchdowns. Truly spectacular for Rodgers. Duke Johnson actually did something, but he's still only getting less than 10 carries a game, despite being the number one back in Houston right now. 9 carries, but 1 big touchdown catch got him above that 15 points, which was more than Dalvin Cook was able to do after a injury left him on the sidelines for a few drives in the Minnesota nail-biter win over Carolina. Austin Eckler made his Gluten Frauds debut.
So sorry.
Are you kidding?
I was trying so hard. Then it just exploded. I couldn't even get up to run or it would come out. See, he feels the same.
Anyways, Austin Eckler had his Gluten Frauds debut, getting the top score for this squad with 18.4 points. He only had 14 carries, but he had 11 receptions, which is quite frankly outrageous. 85 yards on those receptions as well. Soundly defeating Chris Carson, the former fraud, by about 5.5 points, getting 12.9 for Chris Carson on only 8 carries. I have the receipts if people want them, but I did call before the game that Chris Carson would get 2 receptions for 18 yards. If Brennan would watch the show, he could, put it in the group chat and verify that. But I did call that stat exactly right. Unfortunately, that touchdown crushed me inside, and I'm now sad. Let's talk about what else made me sad. Chase Claypool, just getting 6 receptions, a couple big ones, 8.2 points, taking the lead in that last Wednesday game. Dang it, Baltimore, you couldn't hold him to a few less yards, could you? It's quite the bummer. Cooper Kupp and DeAndre Hopkins, both disappointing compared to Robert Woods and Chase Claypool for the Spring Chickens. Surprisingly, actually, let's just hop all the way down here. The Dolphins beat the Browns in points for defense. Helps that the Dolphins were up against the Jets, of course, only allowing 3 points, and they are now the number 3 defense on the year, which is outrageous that the Miami Dolphins have a good defense. So let's head on over to game number 2 then, after that disappointing one, and look at one. We knew this would happen, most likely. The Google team names taking a win over Pelicans on a bench. That is Pelicans on a bench. Actually, the Pelicans on a bench outscored their projections by about 3 points. So they overperformed from what was expected. The name just, of course, outperforming that pretty handedly, despite a very low score from Kyler Murray, getting only 7.9 points. This is actually his first sub 20-point week of the season so far. So just outrageous, point scoring out on the year so far for Kyler Murray. It's about time he had a down week, and Sam is still able to get a win on it no matter what. Both these teams have just, quite frankly, atrocious backfields. Melvin Gordon and Nyheim Hines combining for about 16.6 points. Darrell Henderson and Devin Singletary combining for just over 11 points. It is a tough thing to watch for sure. watching those. But it's all about wide receivers for Sam. We know that DK Metcalf getting 22.7, Will Fuller getting 32.1. He now is suspended for, performance enhancing drugs. So I guess that explains why he's been having such a good season compared to, according to Noel, the number one tight end since week 4, Travis Fulgham, only getting 2 targets. He caught both of them in the loss to Seattle. And Devontae Parker, who has actually played very well this year so far, getting a respectable 15.9. But then really where it comes down to just where running away with it for Sam was Amari Cooper getting a 20.2 point score, 6 receptions, 112 yards and a touchdown in that flex spot, compared to the flex spot for Lucas being Jonnu Smith, who did not even have a target in the win over Indianapolis for Tennessee. Younghoe Koo is outstanding. He's actually the 50th highest scoring player on the season so far, and by far the number 1 kicker. Just absolutely fantastic. I don't even know. He kicked 9 times and scored 21 points. Just the man is a legend, and we love to see that for Lucas. Potential keeper? Question mark. We'll see how that goes. But let's move on to game number 3 here, where we had an absolute heartbreaker for Thomas. His 4th game of the year and 3rd in a row, losing by less than 2.5 points. Absolutely heartbreaking. Rock Plopsta's running away over the dog sniffers, 123 to 121.12 points. Russell Wilson, honestly, since he got to the Rock Plops, has had some down weeks since getting them on the squad here. But it doesn't really matter, just enough to win. That's what John's trying to do, just resting his players, just coasting into the a bye week. What are you doing? What even was that?
I don't know how that got set, but I had an alarm set.
Anyways, John coasting in for a most likely a bye in the first round of the playoffs here. Miles Sanders and Aaron Jones have been kind of disappointing the last couple weeks. This week only getting 5.2 and 9.5 points respectively. But when Davante Adams and Allen Robinson combine for 38 points, 38.5 points, really setting up for success in that wide receiver category. And of course, it's helpful when Nick Chubb backs that up with a 25-point performance by himself. 144 yards on the day and a touchdown plus some receiving yards makes Nick Chubb the cornerstone of this team moving forward. And then, of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers, 14 points, just barely enough to get the win for John. A fumble recovery, a defensive touchdown, an interception, 3 sacks. Really a fantastic performance from the Steelers defense in a surprisingly close game over Baltimore, despite the fact that Baltimore barely had a full squad. Deshaun Watson had another top performing fantasy quarterback performance for the dog sniffers this week, 33.12 points. Absolutely fantastic. And then Ronald Jones, who has been a very solid starting RB1 for this squad, getting 16.8 points. Unfortunately, Ronald Jones will be on bye in week 13 in a crucial game for the dog sniffers to be able to make playoffs. So we'll have to see how that fills in. But Wayne Gallman has actually played pretty well so far this year. He hasn't had a sub 10-point performance since he got the start starting in week 7. Actually a really good player so far this year. He's only ranked 35th in PPR formats, but he's only had a few weeks where he has been the starter for the Giants. Keenan Allen continues to be great. Tyler Boyd having a down week. The loss of Joe Burrow has really diminished his ceiling there. And it's tough to see Tyler Boyd being the wide receiver 2 in this system, given that development. Mark Andrews was out though, so Christian Kirk had to make the start and could not get that duo with Travis Kelce. And then the Saints also 14 points on defense against a team with actually no active quarterbacks prior to signing a practice squad wide receiver. Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't score more points. Kind of disappointing for the Saints on that one. But let's move on to game number 4 here. Officially knocking Noel out of the playoffs was Josh and not trading Lamar, winning 117.32 to 70.56. Taysom Hill, two touchdowns by rushing is fantastic against Denver defense. Scam Newton only 3.96 points. That really did Noel in. Some insider info is that instead of Scam Newton, there was question marks if Derek Carr would make the start. He would have performed even worse than Scam Newton. So I guess Randy's Donuts made the right call there. Alvin Kamara with Taysom Hill versus Drew Brees is just not the same. He is not getting the receiving points that he was used to getting when Drew Brees would check it down to him, with Taysom deciding to just run those on his own, usually it seems like, and then only getting 11 carries as they were trying not to run up the score too much on Denver. Really limited Alvin Kamara here, as well as Brian Hill just letting Younghoe Koo do all the work in Atlanta and only getting a 5.5 point performance there. Mike Thomas, same sort of issue as Alvin Kamara. When the Saints aren't firing on all cylinders, those two aren't going to get a lot of points, and it showed through here with a 7.1 point performance. Calvin Ridley did good. Mike Gesicki did good, but really not a lot to love here. The Rams did have a pretty good score this week, but overall not that good, especially not compared to not trading Lamar's 117.32 point performance. Despite Zeke getting 2.4 points, James Robinson again carrying the load here, 24.4. And then, after that trade of Deontay Johnson away from this team over to Drew, Chris Godwin and Terry McLaurin have become the absolute must starters, along with AJ Brown in that flex spot. There's no question about those three, and the wide receiver core here is really where Josh makes his money. So doesn't matter that Lamar Jackson and Todd Gurley didn't get any points or were out this week, rather. Plenty of points to win there for Josh, and officially knocks Noel out of the playoffs for his first time in league history. And we are guaranteed to have a new champion at the end of this season. Finally, let's get into our Pawn Stars game of the week with that massive playoff implications of our two 6-5 teams going into that week of the gruesome grinders and worse than trash. The GGs running away with it easily off the back of the Kansas City Chiefs. Pat Mahomes, 31.28 points. But then Tyreek Hill, 51.4 points. I think that's the highest score I have ever seen in a fantasy game. He had like 30 in the first quarter. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. And then you combine all of that with Derrick Henry deciding to go for 178 yards and 3 touchdowns in their win over Indianapolis. This was just really an unstoppable team. Worse than trash, did their best. Running back core, nobody got over 5 points. So definitely tough to see there. And DJ Moore really getting held in check by the Minnesota defense somehow. Not really sure where that went or that came from, but Justin Jefferson, probably a keeper for this squad. Honestly, he's the number 12 wide receiver in PPR formats, 22.5 points so far or on that week. Absolutely great. One last thing, or two last things for Drew's team. Tyler Lockett had another bust week. I think he's only had the one boom week since the trade, where he got 17 points. Everything else he's been really held in check. And then Dallas Goedert, fantastic 17-point performance. And then Kendall Hinton was marked eligible to the detriment of Drew, actually getting him negative points to negative 2.78. Who could have possibly seen a practice squad wide receiver not getting points in fantasy football? I am truly shocked about that. It is very possible that, if a correct lineup had been played for this squad, that Drew could have taken over that number one scoring offense on the year. He was not able to catch up to that this week. So that's where we're at. Let's take a look then at our standings. We have 4 teams that have made playoffs officially. They are locked into a playoff spot. That is the Rock Plopstas, the Google team names, Not Trading Lamar, and the Gruesome Grinders. Those are our top 4 teams locking a playoff spot as of right now. There are 2 teams that have locked themselves into the consolation bracket, and that is Pelicans on a bench. Again, that is Pelicans on a bench. And then Randy's Donuts going to 4-8, again, guaranteeing Noel a trip to the losers bracket this year, which means we have 4 teams that are in contention for 2 playoff spots. The Spring Chickens and Worse Than Trash holding those 2 right now at 6-6 apiece. Brennan with 1368 points for, and Tony with 1313 points for. And then at 5-7 each is the Dog Sniffers and the Gluchin Frauds. Both have a higher points for than Brennan. Thomas at 1386 and Zach at 1375. So where we're at for playoff picture, it is for the Spring Chickens and Worse Than Trash. If they win, they're in. They keep their spot. There's nothing that they can do. If they lose, they could lose their playoff spot depending on if the Dog Sniffers or the Gluten Frauds win their games. So we're going to get into it in a minute, but first we have this message, of course. It is the Mahold Minute.
Hey guys, Mahold Minute on the Rathole here. I just wanted to first of all, congratulate those who will be making the playoffs. I guess at this point, it's uncertain who exactly will out of those 4 competitors vying for 2 spots. But I did just want to commend Commissioner Zack Eichten and the whole league really for doing a 6-team playoff versus 8 in a 10-man league. My other league is doing an 8-man league, or an 8-man playoff, excuse me. And I am for some reason in the minority thinking that it should be 6, of course, rewarding a first round bye to the 1 and 2 seed, but also a more exciting finish for the punishment, right? Given a 4-way playoff sort of for it. But anyway, just wanted to get that out there. I'm sort of venting about that right now. I'm in the minority. I shouldn't be. The 6-man playoff is the best. And that's all I have.
All right, thanks, Drew, and welcome back from the Mahold Minute. While we're thinking about the matchup previews for this upcoming week, why don't you keep in mind the rankings? Let's talk about week 13 here. It is a absolute doozy of a week. So let's get into it. Massive playoff implications the entire way through. And let's talk about our Pong Stars game of the weeks. where it is Randy's Donuts and Pelicans on a bench. Again, that is Pelicans on a bench. Neither of these teams can make the playoffs, but depending on the outcome of the other games is really going to impact the seeding for that consolation bracket for Noel. So if Noel ends up at 5-7, or 5-8 rather, and Thomas and Zach also end up at 5-8, well, then it gets down to a bunch of tiebreakers on the points for side of things to determine that seeding. Of course, not to be mean to Lucas, of course, but everybody wants Lucas in that first round of the consolation bracket just to make sure that they don't end up in the punishment round. So massive playoff implications here. So let's take a look at what's going on. First of all, it's Matt Ryan versus Ryan Tannehill. A lot of Ryans in that quarterback area. Giovanni Bernard, who used to be on Randy's Donuts, now starting for Pelicans on a bench. Daryl Henderson, also starting for Pelicans on a bench. James White and Alvin Kamara starting for Randy's Donuts. These are just not the same running backs as these two teams started out with. Both of them had really solid running back course coming into the season and just really not the same anymore. So then we have Adam Thielen, who has had a spectacular year. He's the number 11 wide receiver for PPR formats this year, versus Michael Thomas, who has been out and he's been limited in a lot of games, but he's actually the number 103 wide receiver in PPR formats this year. And he is questionable to start against Atlanta. Calvin Ridley, fantastic. He's the number 13 wide receiver versus Devontae Parker, who is the number 29 wide receiver. So it's really up in the air on which one of these wide receiver combos will be better moving into this one. And then my two favorite kickers this year, Rodrigo Blankenship, all aboard the Blankenship, and then Younghoe Koo, just absolutely fantastic matchup in the kicker spot here. Again, this is a lot of seeding potential. If I'm Randy's Donuts, I might be considering wanting to lose this game because then Noel will end up with that number 2 spot versus in the draft versus potentially ending up somewhere else. But let's talk then about our number 2 game of the week, where we have the gluten frauds versus not trading Lamar in our Pong Stars game of the week here. Lamar Jackson is still on the COVID list, but he's, status still up in the air for week 13. We'll see if he's able to make the start against Dallas. If he is, that's really good matchup for Lamar. Josh Allen has a much tougher matchup against San Francisco on Monday night. And then Lamar obviously playing on Tuesday because of the shenanigans of all of the Baltimore team issues. The big question here is, will Ezekiel Elliott be able to have any sort of good game? He's had a pretty disappointing season for what we expect out of him. He's still the number 8 in PPR formats on the year, but definitely has been disappointing for Josh, I'm sure. Speaking of Josh Jacobs rather will be questionable for a very easy matchup against the Jets. Obviously, hoping that Josh Jacobs makes a full recovery because his backup is on the bench right now for not trading Lamar. So if Josh Jacobs is unable to suit up, there is not that quick plug in there for the gluten frauds. Austin Eckler versus James Robinson should be great. James Robinson has a matchup against Minnesota. We'll see. Hopefully, can hold James Robinson in check for Minnesota's sake, as well as my sanity. Julio Jones and AJ Brown both are on the did not practice list right now. Not great for either of those teams looking at their wide receivers, but DeAndre Hopkins and Terry McLaurin should have a really fun matchup there. Real good shootout. The biggest question going forward is, will Zach Ertz make the starting lineup? There's some trade rumors flying that Zach Ertz was almost traded over to not trading Lamar this year, but a deal was unable to be made. And, pretty sad. We'll see if there's any regrets on that one later. But A lot of talent on both these teams and a lot of bust potential. These are the two most fraudulent teams on the year so far. And this is a must-win game for the Frauds to be able to make playoffs. In our Pong Stars game of the week, number 3, we have the Spring Chickens versus the Gruesome Grinders. Brennan needs to win to get in. Gruesome Grinders are trying to win to make sure that they can get up to a potential first round bye, depending on what happens in the matchups with not trading Lamar and the Google team names. Two of the best quarterbacks in the league. State Farm Bowl coming up here. Aaron Rodgers versus Pat Mahomes. The two top rushing running backs in the league also facing off against each other on Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry. And then, of course, our injury-prone running backs of Chris Carson and David Montgomery. Really fantastic top 3 for both these teams. A lot more boom potential, I think, coming out of the wide receivers for the Gruesome Grinders with Tyreek Hill and Tyler Lockett. And then, of course, Dallas Goedert. We'll see if he's able to maintain his grip on the tight end, lead tight end position with Zach Ertz potentially coming back in their game against Green Bay. Honestly, this is a real good game. I'm cheering for Drew because A, Brennan doesn't watch this show and he won't know that I'm cheering against him. And B, I want Brennan to lose so I can make playoffs. So go Drew. Let's talk about then game number 4, where we have the Google team names and we have the Dog Sniffers, our Pong Stars game of the week. The names 8-4 this year, real good start to the season, but kind of a shadow of where they were at the beginning of the season with their running back stock just declining. Jonathan Taylor not even anywhere near the starting lineup at this point, with Naeem Hines taking the lead in the lineup for the names so far past couple weeks. But Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson is going to be a fantastic quarterback matchup. Really, the running backs on these teams are just not really what you want. Frank Gore making the start this week, it's looking like, instead of Ronald Jones. Frank Gore is approximately 1,000 years old. We'll see if he's able to survive through the matchup against Las Vegas. And then Melvin Gordon just in a real bad situation with Philip Lindsay taking just enough touches to make him not a true running back 1. But I absolutely love the wide receiver core for both these teams. DK Metcalf and T. Higgins versus Keenan Allen and Sammy Watkins. And then Juju Smith-Schuster versus Christian Kirk. Really a solid set of receivers for these squads. We'll see if those are the ones that they roll with, but it's going to be a great matchup. Thomas, I got to cheer against you, man, because I need you to lose to make sure that I have a better shot of making playoffs. So let's go, Sam. Everybody knows I'm a big names guy anyway, so definitely cheering that way. Finally, we have our Pong Stars game of the week, game number 5, where it is the Rock Plopstas up against Worse Than Trash. Big Rock Plopstas guy this week. Tony, I need you to lose so I can make playoffs. You want to lose anyway so you can tank more and get your better draft pick. So I feel like it's okay that I say that. Although Justin Herbert versus Russell Wilson is really going to be a fantastic quarterback matchup. I say that every week with Justin Herbert. The guy's electric. I especially love that he threw 16 times to Austin Eckler. Keep that up, Justin. You're doing fantastic. Don't let anybody tell you differently, and definitely do that a lot more. You know what? Go for 22 targets there. That'd be even better. We'll see if DeAndre Swift can make the start. He's still going through the concussion protocol. There's some concerning news that the concussion may be a little bit worse than initially thought. We'll see if he's able to make the start against Chicago, but definitely want both these teams at full enough strength here. Miles Sanders, Aaron Jones, and Nick Chubb making the start here for the Rock Plopsters versus those old people versus the young guns in DeAndre Swift, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So old versus very new. Speaking of very new, Justin Jefferson is going to be in the mix still against Jacksonville. That's a very nice matchup for the wide receiver out of Minnesota. And then Darren Waller has been fantastic. He's actually the number 2 tight end in PPR formats this year, up against TJ Hawkinson, who is the number 3 tight end in PPR formats this year. So definitely good matchups for really both of them. Waller up against the Jets and Hawkinson up against the Chicago defense. Really, this actually has a potential for being a really good game all around. Obviously, cheering for the Rock Plopstas over Worse Than Trash, selfishly and for my own self-interest. That is all we have on the matchup previews. And we've been over the playoff stuff. We've been over the rankings. So let's hop on into the Pong Stars Pick'em. Welcome, folks, to this week's episode of the Pong Stars Pick'em. We got the 5 of us here today. Looking forward to it. We got a lot of playoff implications in 4 of the games, and we have 1 game that is going to be a lot of fun to watch as well. So let's start with our really fun game, our Pong Stars Game of the Week, where it is Randy's Donuts versus Pelicans on a bench. That is Pelicans on a bench. Andrew, we will start with you.
I've got Randy's Donuts soundly defeating Pelicans on a bench.
Bold.
That's Pelicans on a bench.
All right, great. John, over to you.
I am also going to take Randy's Donuts, and that is my lock for this week. Lucas, it's time to finally stop the bleeding. The season's almost over. New things to look forward to.
3 weeks left.
3 weeks left.
Noel, for you.
I got Randy's Donuts, unfortunately, but
You have to. Sam, over to you.
I am going to keep up with everybody else and say Randy's Donuts narrowly. I don't think it's going to be as sound as Drew thinks. I think they narrowly squeak it out here in the end of the regular season.
Zach, please pick Lucas.
I can't. I'm actually going to pick Noel. Got you on my wall here. Got to go with the pick for Randy's Donuts.
Automatic lock.
Yeah, not a lock. Definitely not a lock. For sure.
I have faith.
Randy's
Lock.
Donuts. All right, now let's go on over to game number 2, playoff implications, our Pong Stars Game of the Week, where we have Zach versus Josh, the fraud bowl of the gluten frauds versus thinking about trading Lamar maybe. And Drew, we will start with you.
I've got the gluten freaks, or is it fraud? I don't know what it is now.
Doesn't matter.
But I'm picking this solely because I want the 2 seed and I need not trading Lamar to lose. So I'm picking gluten freaks.
Love it. John?
I am going to take not trading Lamar. Sorry, Zach.
All right, whatever.
Bummer.
Noel?
I put Zach down, but I'm second guessing myself, unfortunately. I think I'm gonna have to change it to Josh.
Yeah, that's smart. It's good for
Sorry,
you. It's fine. Just really sad. Sam?
I am going to play a little gamesmanship in our pick'ems, and I'm going to pick Josh for this game. I think he's going to win the game, but
This is
Sam's
good
trying
news
to-
for you,
myself.
Zach.
Sam's trying to jinx.
I'm picking Zach. It has to stop. It has to turn around.
It's time to stop.
It is time. I'm gonna do it.
Zach, just join me and Lucas.
I probably will, but you know what? I refuse to concede.
Hey, lock up that.
Recount. I demand a recount against Brennan. He got a forced fumble added on sometime after I put it in the original spreadsheet. Recount. I demand it.
Lock up that 1 seed for the loser bracket. Hopefully not.
God dang it. All right, let's move on. We have game number 3, our Pong Stars Game of the Week, where we have John versus Tony. We have the Rock Plopstas versus Worse Than Trash. Worse Than Trash holding a playoff spot right now. A win over the Rock Plopstas guarantees that Tony makes playoffs first time in league history. And Drew, we will start with you.
We got the Rock Lobsters
The what?
defeating Worse Than Trash because they suddenly became Worse Than Trash once again last week.
John, over to you.
Well, I'm taking the Rock Plopsters. It'll be my honor to finally put an end to this nonsense from Worse Than Trash actually being okay. It'll be my pleasure to remove him from the playoff picture.
That'd be great. I would love that. Noel, over to you.
I got the Rock Lobsters as my lock.
Perfect. Sammer.
The Rock Plopsters are also my lock. I'm going to interrupt Sam quick to say that.
Who's your lock?
The Rock the Rock Plopsters.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm going to join Noel and Drew in locking the Rock Plopsters.
Perfect. And I will also lock Plopsters this one for myself. I have to have John win for me to have a shot at playoffs. John,
I got you, babe. I tried to help you out this week beating Thomas. You got to help yourself at some point, though.
No, I need some more handouts.
Okay.
Please and thank you. Let's move on. We got another big playoff implication game. Our Pong Stars game of the week, where we have the Gruesome Grinders versus the Spring Chickens. Brennan currently holding a playoff spot, winning in. Guaranteed a loss will put him in jeopardy of potentially losing his playoff spot. And we will start with Drew in your own game.
Got the Gruesome Grinders. They are on a heater. I don't see that ending anytime soon. Give me the Gruesome Grinders.
All right, John.
I am also taking the Gruesome Grinders, and I think Drew's right. He's on a heater, but I think it might end in the playoffs when he runs into me. But we'll talk about that later. Sorry. Yeah, I'll take the GGs. What?
Does anybody know if John likes his team or not?
I don't think so, but we'll go over to Noel and see if he see what you think.
I got the Gruesome Grinders as well.
All right, Sammer.
I think Drew rolls to a win this.
It's on
this week.
Joel.
Yep, it was Drew and roll into the same word.
Droll.
Droll. I got Droll as well. Drew and the Gruesome Grinders needing a win from the GGs to give me a better shot at playoffs. You got my back, and of course,
I got your front.
Good luck. Love that. Finally, last game, our Pong Stars game of the week, where we have the Google team names versus the Dog Sniffers. Thomas needs to win this to have a shot at making playoffs. That includes Brennan and Tony having to lose. So Sam would, put Thomas in his grave with a win here. And we will start with Drew.
Got the Dog Sniffers because A, their luck's going to turn around with all these close losses, but also B, I need Sam to lose for the 2 seed.
John.
I agree with Drew. I am taking the Dog Sniffers. The Dog Sniffers. They have showed some extreme grittiness these last 2 weeks, just getting edged out in the end. But I think they're going to get the dub, winning in.
Maybe. Hopefully for them. Would love if Thomas and I could come in and, really yank the rug out from under Tony and Brennan. Tony knows I would love to be in, and Brennan doesn't watch the show, so I don't have to worry about him feeling sad about that. Noel. Who you got, Noel?
Oh, I got Thomas as well. The Dog Sniffers.
That's a fun way of saying it. Sam.
I have got Google team names. I've been rolling with my team all year. I'm going to keep it up. I think I put Thomas in his grave. And this is a playoff game for the Google team names. Win and lock up the 2 seed. Get into our first ever second round of the playoffs. So we're treating this as a playoff game. We're taking it to them.
You're talking too much.
Now, Sam,
that stat about the second round of the playoffs, we probably, for your sake, for the public relations department of your team, should not have been said.
And
it's been hanging on our wall in the locker room all year. That's our goal.
Making it to the second round of the playoffs does not guarantee you will get a second win in the playoffs of all time. So be a little bit careful.
I've never won in the playoffs. My
you have
only
won
win
one
is in
game
the toilet bowl.
You have won one postseason game.
It was in the consolation bracket though. I've
Yeah,
actually
that's-
never
that
won
counts
in
as
the regular
postseason.
playoffs.
That's postseason.
That's
He said one
postseason.
postseason win, not
Yeah,
one playoff
postseason
win.
Yeah,
And
postseason.
I need Sam to make sure that Thomas cannot sneak ahead of me if one of those other teams loses. And everybody knows I'm a huge names guy. Love the names. Great team this year, even with their suspensions that they have. Still
no comment.
And that is where we leave off on our pick'em part. We do have a bonus question though. So for 2 points, one for each correct answer, of the 4 teams still who do not have a locked spot in the postseason of Thomas, Tony, Zach, and Brennan, which 2 of those teams will make the playoffs?
And make sure it lines up with your picks this week.
And we will start with Drew.
So I picked both the gluten frauds and the dog sniffers to win. However, I am going to say, by virtue of tie breaking in points, that Brennan Swan makes the playoffs, that the spring chickens and the dog sniffers make the playoffs. Therefore, leaving the gluten fraud just outside at the 7th seed.
You will kill me if that happens. John, over to you.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I agree. I think the dog sniffers win and get in, and I think despite a loss, the spring chickens are going to hold enough of a point differential to also make it in.
Fair enough. All right, Noel.
Yeah, nailing that nail in, I guess. Spring chickens and dog sniffers.
Risky. Sam.
I'm going to shake it up a little bit. I'm going to say spring chickens with Brennan and his team. And then I've got the gluten freaks, frauds, whatever they are. I think they're going to sneak it out and get in as the 6th seed.
And I am going to go very rogue, and I'm going to say that both of the teams that are currently in get the rug yanked. I'm going with Zach, and I'm going with Thomas.
Love it.
To make the playoffs over the spring chickens and worse than trash. Not sure what Thomas will say, but if he gets points, he gets points for it, I guess. We'll see. And right now, where we are at in the point totals for the Pick'em record, right now we have 47 points as our leader with Noel. Then we go to 46 points at Drew, 45 points for Sam, 42 points for Zach, 39 points for John, and 36 points for Thomas.
To clarify, this is the last week, right?
No, there are 3 weeks after this.
Well,
Do we pick the toilet bowl as well?
Oh yeah, we'll pick every postseason game, but remember, there's only 2 weeks of the consolation bracket, and there's only 2 games in that first week of
The playoff bracket.
yes.
and there's only the 1 game in the final week. So, the number of points available
Is
are
dwindling.
dwindling, and it's not the same 5 games every week. So, Sam, I could see you doing mental calculations in your head there. So.
Gears are
Just
turning.
take a look at the bracket and you'll be able to figure it out. But that's what we got for this week on the Pawn Stars Pick'em Boys. And we will catch you next week for our first round of postseason picks. All right, thanks, Pick'em players. We have this week and then 3 more weeks of playoffs to finish off those picks. Definitely really close still. Mostly anybody's game on who can win that new trophy that we have, the Rocco Memorial Trophy. We will have somebody new taking home that Carrot Memorial Trophy. Really a lot of new hardware going around this year, and I'm excited to hopefully get one of them. That's all we have from this week on the Rathole. I'm your host, Commissioner Zack Eichten, and thank you for voting.